Rev up your engines!
Omar says, Scotty, what are your thoughts on Mazda cars? Go back 4 decades ago, they were crap. I didn't like them. The trannies blew up. Toyota now owns, I don't know, 20% of Mazda or something. And they got a deal going where they're making Mazdas and Toyotas in the same assembly line. I believe it's in Alabama. So they're getting a lot of Toyota technology, and they're much better made than they used to be. If you went back 15 years ago, I would say do not buy a Mazda with an automatic transmission. Trannies break. The new ones, they have more of a Toyota design to them. I don't see their automatic transmissions breaking down like they used to. So they're a lot better made than they were. But that said, I wouldn't buy a Mazda that's more than like 6 years old, 5, 6 years old. Before that, Mazda had a bunch of deals with Ford. They had a lot of crappy Ford parts that broke all the time on the cams, on the engines. I wouldn't buy an older one. Here's an interesting way that a guy got his car to run better only by changing where he bought his gasoline. Joan Joseph sent me an email. Hey, you featured my '05 Camry with 316,000 miles. You said that my long-term fuel was 6.9 and my short was 8. I switched to Shell gas, and now it's only 0.8%, and long-term went to 4.7 instead of 6.9. I've learned a lesson. Better gasoline works better. Now, normally it doesn't make all that much difference. But in a high-mileage car, they often need better gasoline. It's the weirdest thing. Because when I was a kid, I had an Opel. And if I ran that thing on regular gasoline, I would get about 4 miles a gallon worse than if I ran it with high test gas. The engine was worn. It was kind of carboned up inside. And they actually run better on better gasoline when they're old and worn. He proved out by just switching in his 315,000 mile Camry. And the weird thing was, it wasn't that he went from the cheapest gas to the high test gas. He was still using the regular Shell. He wasn't buying super unleaded. He was buying regular unleaded. And that car with high mileage, the gasoline you buy will affect it. Either that, he was buying really cheap gas in the first place. It was really horrible. But yeah, you don't want to buy the cheapest gas out there, let me tell you. You never know where it comes from. If you buy it from a regular station, that's the supply they're getting from a big company. It's always going to be pretty much the same. Where if you go to one of these discount places, they can often buy it from the spot market. Whoever's got it cheapest, so who knows? Not that bad of an idea to stick to major stations. I normally do. Brady says, I got an '09 Jeep. It won't stay running. I changed the plugs and the wires, checked the fuel lines. The Jeep won't start on its own. I have to pump the gas. It dies if you stop pumping the gas when it's cold. It's also throwing multiple cylinder misfires and cylinder 2 misfires. The first thing you have to do is fix the misfire, because if an engine is misfiring, it'll stall out and you got to keep pumping gas to give it extra gas so at least it'll run. It's probably only running on it, so you got a 6-cylinder engine. It's probably running on 5 or 4 cylinders. Pray something simple. Because you said you got cylinder number 2 misfire, change the ignition coil on cylinder number 2. Or if you want to not gas as much, take the number 2 ignition coil, put it on a number 5, and put the 5 on number 2. Swap them. Then if the misfire goes to number 5, you know the coil's bad and replace the coil. Then you're not guessing. Then you'll know. Now, if it still misfires then, you're ready to change the spark plugs. That means that either your fuel injector's bad on number 2, or you got a blown engine that's starting to blow, or computer problems that can get real expensive fast. Pray it's just a bad ignition coil. It often is, but pray it's that. Because it is a Jeep, it's a Chrysler product. The computers go bad on all those times. The engines blow head gaskets. I don't advise people to buy those things. Should I fix or junk my 2000 Saturn? It ticks at idle. I smell exhaust. And it's burning oil and burning oil. It's a 2000 Saturn wagon with a 3-liter V6. It's burning a lot of oil. Here's what you want to do. Change the PCV valve. It's like a $10 part. Change the PCV valve. If it stops burning oil, then go further and see what else is wrong. If it still burns oil, junk it. Those had horrible engines. Those American-made V6 engines were garbage. GM made them and they were terrible engines. And that's a 23-year-old version of it. I'm sure it's all worn out. I had customers in Houston with them that had 65,000 miles and the engines were wearing out. They were terrible engines. So if you change the PCV valve and it still burns a ton of oil, the engine's flat, went out, junk the stupid thing. Don't put any more money into it. It's not worth. Now, if it had been a 4-cylinder Saturn, those things can run forever. I've seen people get 400,000 miles. They're still running okay, not really burning that much oil. But those American-made V6s that GM put in them, they were absolute garbage. That's one of the reasons Saturn went out of business. Those engines were horrible. The people had bad reputations with them. They blew head gaskets. They broke. They burned oil. And then people said Saturn, and then they stopped making them. Farm Boy 15 says, what do you say is the best pickup truck and most reliable? Well, of course, it depends on what kind you want. If you want a mid-sized one, the Toyota Tacoma, by far, is better than any of them out there. They can run 4 ever, whether you get a 4-cylinder or a V6. Now, if you want a bigger truck, Tundras are excellent trucks, but now as of this year, they started only making V6s, and I don't like them. I only like them with the V8s. So in that case, I'd get an F-150 if I was getting a new one, because I would want the V8 engine. I don't like the V6 engines. I'm not a fan of turbocharged V6 engines in a big pickup truck. So I'd go Ford in that case. Now, I don't know what you want to do with your pickup truck. If, say, you're going to tow stuff all the time, then I'd say go to a diesel truck. Then you can get a Ford diesel truck. It's kind of funny, but I mean, if you look at what's out there, a lot of the trucks now use diesel engines that they don't make themselves, right? They buy them from another company. And if you can find a diesel truck that has a good engine in it, it doesn't matter all that much who's building them. Like some of the Nissan trucks now, they come with the American diesel engine in them. Nissan doesn't make it, and they don't make the transmissions either. They have Allison transmissions that are American made, and they're well-made transmissions too. But that's mainly if you're going to pull a lot of weight. Diesel costs more, the fuel is more expensive, but they're made for towing heavy weights. So it really depends on what you want to do with the truck. Juan Figueroa says, Scotty, a dealership tried to charge me $20,000 for a 2008 Tahoe with 200,000 miles. Run away from that. I would not buy a modern Tahoe anyways. They don't make them as good as they used to make them. They don't last as long. 2008 is when they started making them crappier. That would be ridiculous to pay 20 grand for a vehicle that's got 200,000 miles that isn't all that well made. That's generally when they start falling apart. The transmissions almost always start falling apart by then. It was a good thing you didn't buy it, but it just shows the absurd prices people are getting on used vehicles these days. Diesel says, Scotty, what's the most reliable hatchback in 2022? Toyota Corolla. They seem the most reliable ones you can possibly get. And of course, the Hondas are good too. I mean, those are generally the most reliable by any of the vehicles made in the world. Stuff they sell here in the United States. Azar Wilson says, Scotty, what do you think would be a better contracting work vehicle? 2001 Chevy Silverado 1500 or 2004 Ford Econoline E250, both with 200,000 miles. In that case, I'd go with the Chevy because it's a 2001. They used to make them a lot better in 2001. With a good V8 engine, solid made. They weren't made in Mexico with a bunch of crappy parts. I'm not a big fan of the Ford Econolines because those vans are a pain in the butt to work on. Being a big heavy van, they're less aerodynamic than a truck and they get even worse gas mileage. That I'm not a fan of those big old vans. I would rather go for a pickup truck. And back in the day, Chevy Silverados were pretty well built. Today, I wouldn't touch a Silverado 1500. They make them horrible. But back in the day, they made them better. Sam Strebe says, Scotty, my Cadillac Converter's going. Should I clean it or replace it? What the heck? Why not try cleaning it? Realize one thing. You can only clean so much. If you ever seen a picture of the inside of a Cadillac Converter, it's got a bunch of honeycombs. Little bitty holes, kind of like a bee nest, right? Little bitty honeycombs. Now, if oil and stuff gets on the honeycomb and burns, it blocks them up. Eventually, if that burnt oil carbon is so thick, no cleaner's going to clean that off, right? But if it's in between, sometimes the cleaners will work. And if you're an industrious person, this may sound insane, but it actually works. If you can get your Cadillac Converter off, get yourself a big enough bucket, fill it with soapy water, throw the thing in there for 12 hours, then get it out, and then hose it down, the high pressure hose. You might get a lot of pieces off, and then it works fine. Most people aren't going to go through all that trouble taking it apart, but actually that can clean it the best. Other than that, you can try some of the Cadillac Converter cleaners. Sometimes it works. You never know. It just depends on how clogged up it is, and you're not going to know until you try cleaning it. That's just the way that it goes. Ghostly Traveler says, Scotty, is the Nissan Titan XD a reliable truck? Yes, I've had customers with them that absolutely love them. They got big old V8 engines. They got a lot of torque, like any big V8 engine. They're gas hogs. That's just how big trucks go, but they're pretty reliable. Yeah, they're a Nissan, but their big trucks are much better than their little cars. Nissan always made pretty good rear-wheel drive transmissions. It's the front-wheel drive Jatco transmissions they make that are crap, but that's a big old pickup truck. And those systems work much better. They're better made than the ones in their crappy little cars, so they can be good pickup trucks. And you can usually get used ones a lot cheaper than you're going to find a Toyota. Everybody wants a Toyota, so the prices are high. Well, indeed, there is a flying car now. Explorer from Parajet can fly. But I put a little asterisk there, because it's not really flying. It's got a parachute on it. It's an all-terrain buggy that can go 80 miles an hour on the ground and 50 miles an hour up in the air. A motor on the back with a propeller, and I believe they're the Wankel rotary engines in them, that can then get enough lift that with the giant chute that they have on the top, it can fly around. It's not actual flying. I mean, it's kind of like you're going up in a balloon. You're in the basket and the sail on the top is powering you around, but technically you could say it is a flying car. They say they can go 15,000 feet up in the air and fly for 2.4 hours. Now on the ground it's pretty fast. It goes 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds. Slower up in the air. That's the odd thing. It's faster on the ground than it is in the air. It can go 85 miles on the ground, but only 50 up in the air. You'd be tootling around. But I guess technically you can call it a flying car. I mean, the definition of flying car just comes some of the ones that they work on, they call them flying cars. In this case, it's much closer to a flying car, even though it's got a giant parachute that makes it fly. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.